We're in Lavagna near Genoa on the Italian coast today to take a look at the new Jeanneau MF1095 Series 2 before it makes its world debut at the Cannes Yachting Festival. Now, as I'm certain you know, the Merry Fisher has been around for a good while now, and we all know what to expect from it. It's all about multi-purpose versatility for the family user on an outboard-powered platform that's relatively affordable to buy. Well, as I say, this is the Series 2. So what it's aiming to do is be sufficiently different to the Series 1, sufficiently improved and uprated that even owners of that original 1095 Fly will look at this and think, well, yeah, actually, it's worth the extra investment trading in and upgrading to this. So I'm expecting some fairly significant changes here. But on the face of it, as we look at the boat from the outside here, from the stern, it all looks much as we've seen before from Merry Fisher. We've got that offset pilot house moved to the port side, so we've got a slightly narrower raised side deck to port and a more substantial, deeper, safer starboard side deck. We've also got the outboard engines, twin 300s in this case, and as things stand, because this boat is yet to be launched, these are the only engines available with this platform, but they're also looking at the potential for 350s in the future. But what we'll do is jump on at this starboard swim platform and take a closer look at the details, because as you can see, this is the sole point of access to this asymmetrical cockpit, and straight away you can tell that they really worked hard to maximize the use of space. You can see we've got a ladder plumb straight up against the back end of that pilot house to avoid getting in the way of this cockpit deck, and when you need to use it, you lift and swing it out and fix it into that bracket on the floor so you can get up to the Flybridge. Same deal with this aft bench. You see it goes right the way aft above the engine well, right towards the cowlings themselves, to make excellent use of space. And then when you're finished for the day, as you can see, we've got deck runners. You can shift the whole thing forward, trim those engines right out. But straight away, you'll notice that there are differences here between the Series 1 1095 Fly and this particular boat. And one of the chief differences is that. Now this is a fold down terrace, really good size on the starboard side, entirely standard. You don't have to spec that up for a hefty bunch of cash. That comes with the standard package. And on the Series 1 model, that was just a little side gate here. So that's a major step up. We still get a side gate on the port side, and that's particularly handy, of course, because as I say, sole point of access to this cockpit is on the starboard side. So that's a really useful little asset. Now in terms of the furniture in here, well, it's a simple L-shaped arrangement. We do have a little cushion here at the port quarter that lifts straight out so you can get to that port swim platform as well, should you need to. And we also have a couple of table brackets down there. And that's quite interesting too, because we also get a couple of tables as standard on this boat. Fiberglass tables, but you can opt for the more expensive teak tables if you prefer. And it's quite handy that the same two tables that you can fit down here, where you can use one of those, take it up onto the Fly and use that in the bracket up there instead. But before we leave this cockpit and head to the bow, I just want to talk a little bit about storage. It doesn't sound like a particularly sexy topic, but when it's done this well, it kind of is. So in there, inside this bench, we've got lots of brackets for the uprights, which is for the guardrail that goes around that terrace when it's in the down position. That continues on the port side. As you can see, we've got canvases in there as well, some lines. We move over to the port side and lift this section up. Well, that really is a good size. Lots of gear in there in preparation for the Cannes Yachting Festival, and a little hatch there that gives you access to the back of that shore power unit there. But if we just lift up this deck hatch as well, and we can do that because, as I say, the ladder is pushed flush to the back end of the pilot house, and you'll see we've got loads of extra storage under here, good strong rams, so I don't have to struggle to lift that up at all. And you can fit all kinds of really bulky gear in there, no problem at all. And this ladder, incidentally, Well, a lot of people, when you've got outboard engines on a family boat, they don't really like swimming and reboarding next to the engines themselves, even if the engines are switched off. So as you can see, we've got a couple of little receptacles in that drop-down terrace. So that ladder fits into there, so you can board and reboard without going near the props. Nice little touch that, but as I say, the scale of this is really impressive. Beautifully lined too, as is the underside of the lid. There's a rubber gasket there as well. It's really nicely done. And these little hatches, you'll see we've got a couple on either side. Well, they give you access to the tops of the fuel tanks. A pair of 370 litre fuel tanks, one on either side, so 740 litres in total. But let's shut that back up and head forward to the bow, because that is substantially redesigned over the Series 1 boat. We'll head along the starboard side deck, given that that's the more generous of the two, and it's a decent width if I point that camera down. Really nice high guardrails as well. There's no guardrails on the roof structure, but you really don't need them. It feels very secure. Skipper's side door, a couple of steps up to the bow space. We've actually got the sunshades erected, as you can see. So if I nip under there, you can see it's a really quite attractive space. The beam comes a long way forward and they've used it really well. So I'll just head forward, dip down into this little trough, spin around and have a little talk about that. Now, first of all, this is a lovely big sunbed, framed, as you can see, inside these mouldings on either side to give you an extra sense of security up here on the bow. And I like the angle of the backrest as well. Quite often they're a little too subtle to be of any use, but those are really comfortable. Now, I reckon you could sit 4 people there rather than just the 3 that you would suggest it was designed to actually accommodate. And the fact that we've got this trough here, which I've already mentioned, well, this is not in evidence on the Series 1 boat, and the benefit of this is that it just feels that little bit more secure. You've got somewhere to put your feet, and that means that I can face back from the forepeak towards the people sitting there, and it's a lot more sociable. And actually, because we've got this little trough, you're not on top of the foredeck, you're kind of nestling in it. Your seamanship duties feel a bit more secure when you're up here as well. Now, of course, the potential downside of having a little trough like this up in the forepeak is that it kind of impoverishes the headroom at the head end of the bed in that master cabin. But as you'll see in a bit, it doesn't really make a critical impact at all. So it's a really good design feature, this, particularly as it allows us to use this little letter slot light just to admit a bit of extra natural light down below into that owner's cabin. But let's just sneak out of here and head back along that narrower port side deck just to see what it's all about. Well, it is quite narrow, as you can see, and the structure does come out a little bit. There's a bit of a lip there above the window, so it kind of pushes your hip out a touch, but there is a grab rail, happily, so it's not too bad. And you wouldn't choose to use it in a bit of a sea state, particularly as that grab rail stops short of the aft cockpit. Now, we'll pop inside in a second, but first we want to head up to the Flybridge. So I'll whip that ladder out and we'll give ourselves an easier way to climb up. When we get to the Flybridge, well, again, the changes are quite clear. Firstly, we find ourselves at the helm forward on the port side, and that's pretty much the same as it was. But the difference here is that it's very, very sociable. We've got a lot of additional seating over on the starboard side, and we've got some convertibility as well. So the helm seat will twist around and face the other seats here. As you can see, we've got seating for 2 people here next to the skipper, a couple of co-pilots. But if we reverse that backrest, then immediately you've got a dining station for 4 people. And this is the table I was talking about that also fits down into the slots down in that cockpit. In addition, there's an infill that will go in here. So you can actually have a wraparound sunbed that orbits that helm station entirely. Say if you're a fella with a family of 4, 5, maybe even 6 people, you can sit up here and cruise in company without feeling like you're left out of the party. But while we're up here, we should have a slightly closer look at the helm as well. Seems silly not to. We've got a bolster there. We've got 4.5 movement there, as well as a rotating seat. We've got an adjustable wheel as well, which is handy. And we've got our thrusters here on the port side. I say thrusters, we don't have a stern thruster here, that's just your bow thruster. There's our zip weight controls, a little bit of switch gear, and we've got our joystick and throttles, plus a 9-inch plotter and the Yamaha displays. If I nestle down into there, well, the adjustability of this position makes it really supremely comfortable. You're right up close to the wind deflector, so it actually feels like quite an intimate little space. But as I say, there's loads of companion seating, really good convertibility. So that is a pretty impressive upgrade on the Series 1 model. But I would like, as always, given that we've got so much seating up here and it's a place you could feasibly stop and have lunch, I'd like to see the option of a fridge in one of these seat bases, because I don't believe that's currently on the options list. Let's spin around and head back down these steps. As we do so, look, I think I've broken the ram for this lid, and that's the second or third time I've done that already. As I say, this boat is due to appear in Cannes, so it's not quite the finished article. There are a few things to tidy up, but they're getting there. And when we get down here, well, the saloon looks pretty generous, you have to say. There's a good beam to it, and that makes sense actually, because this Series 2 model is 4 centimetres beamier than its predecessor. And what we get here is quite simplistic, but pretty effective nonetheless. We've got a dinette on the port side, big enough for 4 or 5 people, you would think. The helm up there on the starboard side, and a fore and aft galley on the starboard side, just behind that helm seat. We got the curtains closed here. We got little poppers, little bits of elastic just to pull it taut. And these do a really effective job. It's about 34 degrees here in Italy today. The sun's coming directly on our starboard beam, so we try to cool it down by putting these up, and they're really effective. Absolutely block out that warmth. But in terms of the facilities we got here, decent bit of work surface, decent sink too, and an induction hob. It's quite interesting though, because it's dropped down 6 or 7 centimetres, I'd say. Maybe they thought that the idea there was to make sure that your pots and pans didn't disappear off the surface of the hob. But they're actually going to raise that another 5 centimetres to make it easier to use, because they deem it quite impractical as it is. And if you don't actually like induction, and I, to be honest, kind of hate it, you can go with gas instead, in which case you've got the locker for that directly here. So no problems there at all. What I also like is this. I mean, this is not a huge boat, nor is it a particularly high budget boat. So I'm not going to suggest that the galley actually extends out into the cockpit as you might on a super yacht, integrates the 2 spaces. But it's a pretty good effort, particularly if I grab hold of this section, you'll see it's got a few pegs on the underside. This is the lid for that, hob. Swing it around, drop it into this spot. And look at that. That is not a bad little idea there. It's quite nicely executed. I know it's not going to change your life, but it's quite nice that they've gone to the effort to design it and executed it in a way that actually enables you to use it for nibbles and drinks when you're outside in this cockpit. Now if we step back in, you'll see that we've got a fridge under here. That comes as standard. There's an additional optional fridge down below. I'll show you that in a bit. A microwave down in here, and a whole bunch of storage options under there as well. Additional storage up top, I believe that's optional, and the same on the port side just above the dinette. And as for the dinette itself, well, we've got additional storage under here. They work really hard with the storage on this boat, and you've got to, as a family boat, a boat that's going to be used for day boating and for cruising, for a mix of everything. Storage is important. As on previous models, we've got a little hatch up here on the dash top, which is used for your TV bracket. Makes a decent bit of sense. Now that nobody seems to want paper charts, it makes particular sense. And as again we've seen on previous models, if you fold this table and reverse this backrest, well, it raises to the same level as the skipper's seat, gives you an extra couple of co-pilot seats, so that's quite useful too. And I also like the fact that, in contrast to the Series 1 model, where the fiberglass ledge came up significantly higher, where we have much larger, deeper panes of glass here. It does good things for the light, and when you're sitting here at the dinette, it does really good things for the views too. As for the dinette itself, well, sleeping capacity is just as important as storage on a boat that's going to be used for all sorts of things. So happily, you can convert this into an occasional double berth. Not with this table or with that leg, you have to get rid of those and slot them under here. but there is a cushioned infill with a rigid back that sits in this space, so you can use that as an occasional double berth. And that, believe it or not, takes the sleeping capacity of this boat to 8, because we have 3 cabins down below, and we'll get to those in a second. But first, before we do that, I'll just lift up this carpet, because I haven't gone on quite long enough about the storage on this boat. Now, if I open this up just beneath the deck, you'll see, well, what we actually have here is an air conditioning unit, and this particular unit is designed to keep the 2 guest cabins cool. There's a second air conditioning unit in the bow cabin to keep the owner cool, but if you don't spec this particular AC unit, then this is a very generous storage space. And if I continue ripping up the carpet and making a mess of the boat, let's do that up here, there we are, and open this one up too. Well, this is interesting too. What we have in here is a little trough for bits and bobs, and down in here, well, this is access directly into that starboard guest cabin, so you can just chuck infills and cushions and tables and basically everything they've already chucked down in here without having to head down below. So that's really useful. You know, as I say, it's a 3 cabin boat, but if you operate as a family of 4 or a couple of couples and you want to use this starboard cabin as storage, well, it's a tremendous feature, and this really helps make the most of that. And now we've popped the carpet down rather clumsily, let's pop down and see what these 3 cabins are all about. And when we get down in here, the first thing we're greeted with is a fore and aft corridor bathed in a decent bit of natural light. It's nice and open up here, so you don't feel hemmed in at all. We've got the owner's cabin forward. We've got access to that storage cabin, or that 3rd cabin on the starboard side. And we've got an additional cabin over here on the port side. So we'll take a look at that first. It sits beneath that port dinette in the saloon. And when you get in here, well, the size in terms of the footprint is very good. The deck head does stoop a bit, but I've tried, and you can just about sit up in bed, propped up by pillows. The window's good, there's decent ventilation. And if you like, you can get an infill in here, so you can turn this into one enormous full-sized double. Additional storage there. If I spin around, you'll see we've got additional storage here, and I think under the changing seat. So it does a very decent job indeed. This is interesting though. On boat number 1, the one going to the Cannes Yachting Festival, they've got the little electrics panel here up on this bulkhead. But as you can see, it's got blue and red LEDs that threaten to keep you awake at night if you're sleeping in there. So what they're going to do is take that panel, pop across to the starboard side and mount it in here instead. Now, in the upper section, we've got access to that optional second fridge I talked about when we were in the saloon. Below there, there's another door, and that is where that electric panel will go. But again, there's good storage all over this boat, excellent storage. And while we're in here, we'll have a little look aft and see what this 3rd cabin's all about. Now, as I've said, it's already full of bulky kit. Kind of illustrates how effective it is should you want to cruise as a couple of couples or 4 people and use this for storage. But the window's certainly very good. And even though you've got that dip in deck head beneath the saloon deck, well, you've got plenty of space beneath the helm here where the deck head lifts to prop yourself up in bed if this is where you stick your pillows. So it's not a bad space at all. As for the owner's cabin, well, here it is, through sliding doors, just to make best use of space. As elsewhere on the boat, we've got the curtains closed. You can't quite see the size of the windows. Let's just whip those open now so you can have a quick look. Pretty generous. Relatively deep, relatively long. And here is that little letter slot light out onto the foredeck that I mentioned earlier. Plenty of space at the head end of the bed to prop yourself up. So that dipping trough on the foredeck that makes such a difference to the day space out there, well, it doesn't impoverish your space in here in any critical way. You've got decent access to both sides of the bed. And I'm going to talk about storage again. Look at this. Nicely judged rams, enormous space, one-handed job. Really impressive, that. And what else is quite impressive in here is another change over Series 1. Now, if you look aft from the bed, this on the Series 1 1095, that was a blank bulkhead. So in order to access the heads compartment, you have to go out into that central corridor with everyone else and use the commoner's door to the bathroom. Well, not so here, because we get our own dedicated private access. And again, the footprint is pretty good. If I step in there, headroom is okay, as you can see. I've got 2 or 3 inches above my head. And there's a separate shower. And another difference over Series 1 is that on this particular model, they have raised that shower a little, just a couple of inches, and given it a decent lip. So actually, while on Series 1 you would tend to soak the floor with shower water, now that is not so much a problem. We're finally out on the water now, and it really is glorious. 34 degrees, relatively flat, those lovely long lazy swells that you sometimes get in this part of the world. So a lovely little playground for this boat. But before we get up and running, let's just have a quick talk about the helm, because the first thing that strikes me is the fact we've got lots of shiny black plastic all over the place, which does glare a bit. So I'd prefer something a bit matte in that regard. It's not a difficult thing to achieve. In terms of what we get here though, we've got a compass on the dash top directly in my eye line, and behind that we've got a little trough for your bits and bobs. You can use some phones in there as well, because you've got some charging points, but we also have a wireless charger trough down here for your posh modern phones as well. A little bit of switch gear, the basics, the horn, the wipers and so on. And we've got our bow thruster here on the left hand side with the Yamaha data display. A 12-inch plotter on the main tier of the dash. I reckon there's space for a second 12-incher if you want one. We also have a drained cup holder, our zip weight controls, our joystick, and our throttles here, plus a little pouch down below and an angled foot brace, which is quite handy. So it's a comfortable spot. A little bit of extra kit up on the moulding above that skipper's side door, our VHF, and also our fusion remote and a little speaker. And the side door itself, even though you've got to sort of stoop to get through, it's a very practical sort of spot. A good rail here, a good cleat there, good access to that side deck, and a nice size of side deck actually. It's quite reassuring, a very easy boat this to helm single-handed. In terms of the seat, where we get a bolster, we also get some good lateral braces there, so it's very comfy. It moves fore and aft, and it also, as I mentioned, rotates to face the guys at the dinette on that port side when you come to anchor or to a mooring. So that's a handy little touch. But one other thing that I want to mention are these. This is really cool. This is basically, it's not air conditioning. We've got a couple of little vents here, and you can just direct them in your direction when you're underway, because there's a kind of slot in the front of the roof structure that just flows the wind back, flows the air back, so you get a nice cool draft over your face, even when you've got the side door and the aft doors closed. But look, let's strap on the kill cord and have a little play, because this really is just the perfect sort of day for it. We'll trim her in, stick her on single lever, put the zip weight controls on manual, and get up and running. Now, I've already mentioned that this boat currently comes with just one engine rig, and that is these twin 300s, these Yamahas we got on the transom here today. And as you get underway, well, there's a little bit of noise and a bit of fuss to get up on the plane, but once you're there, what are we doing now? 25 knots? Well, the engine note dies away, and actually it dies away a lot if you just close those aft doors. You can leave this one open and you still get pretty good refinement figures. But in terms of the efficiency, once we're running at about 25 knots, we're seeing 100 litres per hour. That's 4 litres per nautical mile. Give her a little bit of extra trim, just straighten her up with a tabs a touch. Now, as I mentioned, we've got a pair of 370 litre tanks, so 740 litres in total, minus 20% redundancy, 600 litres to play with, so a usable range of 150 miles. Now, water tank's not very big, about 160 litres, but if you intend to use this for slightly longer term, more involved cruising with your family, then you can upgrade that as well to 260 litres. So it's pretty handy in terms of its range and in terms of its autonomy. The fact that we've got a generator also helps in terms of the autonomy, because of course we've got a couple of air conditioning units, so that's necessary, plus an induction hob. But if we push her through now, give us some more trim, up to around about 40% on those leg angles. 5,000 RPM, 30 knots. We're seeing about 5 litres per nautical mile at 30 knots. And if we really give her the beans, give her the maximum, put those hammers down, and right at the very top end, well, 34, 35 knots at 200 litres per hour. It's not a bad return. And what I particularly like here, although the seas aren't especially challenging, they're not steep and aggressive and messy like a Saloon chop. But what I really do like is the fact that even though there's a lot of bulk to this boat and relatively modest power on that transom, we can adjust the trim of it. You know, we can push that waterline a little way up. We can lift the skirts just by angling those legs out a little and get good cruising efficiency. And when you want to have a play, well, of course we're not expecting her to be especially dynamic in that regard, but we'll just get over this little swell and heel her over to port first. We've still got a reasonable bit of trim on, but there's a nice bit of slip, a nice kind of novice friendly combination, a balance between the grip and the slip. Just straighten her up again in terms of the tabs, lift the trim a little bit more. We'll spin around to starboard this time. Again, it's a nice generous heel, and there's some pretty good torque actually from those 300s. I don't think you'd ever want to go any less than 300. Because as I say, this is a fairly bulky boat. You've got that Flybridge up top. We got a particularly generous beam, 4 centimetres, beamier than the old boat. Comes in around about 5 tonnes, so it's quite a lot of boat to shift. And the 300s do well. I'm not sure you particularly want the 350s. 35 knots is a very serviceable top end, particularly for most family users, which is the kind of user this boat is going to attract. But look, she's actually a decent bit of fun to play with. She really is. And then when you're back on the straight, yeah, you could fly along at 35. You can hammer through the turns. But if we just settle down again, trim her out, straighten her up, 25, 26 knots, 100 litres per hour, nice and flat, nice and comfortable, with the back doors closed, relatively quiet. Yeah, really good performance. Very happy with that. I reckon this new Mary Fisher 1095 Fly then is pretty much exactly the boat Jeanneau was trying to produce in the form of its Series 2. I mean, for a start, that aft cockpit is demonstrably upgraded over Series 1 because of the standard provision of that starboard fold-down terrace. The bow, well, that has been elevated to an altogether fresh level of day space over Series 1, and the same goes for the Flybridge, and that's to say nothing, of course, of the owner's bow cabin, which now has direct access to that port head compartment. Now, it's not perfect, of course. This is, after all, the prototype model just being sorted out to go to the Cannes Yachting Festival. So a couple of bits here and there just to fix up, not least because I broke the bolster at the helm seat, and I also broke the ram on the hatch to access the Flybridge, and I also pulled a handle off, actually, the door to access cabin number 3. But actually, build quality on this boat is commendably sound. The only issue we've got to talk about really then is price, but we don't yet have the pricing. That's going to emerge at the show itself. So if you're interested in this boat, get yourself to Cannes, take a look at it in the flesh and see what you think. If you've got an opinion, please do leave your comments in the section below. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button, and if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, then make sure you subscribe to the Motorboat and Yachting channel.